Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Ohio EPA's 2023 Sustainability Conference. My name is April Stevens, and I am in the Division of Environmental and Financial Assistance here at Ohio EPA. I'll be moderating this afternoon's session, The Truth About Ohio's Recycling, where attendees will learn from industry experts about the factors that drive people's confidence in recycling, considering the industry takes into account to positively influence participation in recycling programs, and how end-use markets affect Ohio recycling. Ohio EPA's 2023 Sustainability Conference has 12 sessions over 3 days. Registration information and a conference agenda are located on Ohio EPA's conference webpage, and we hope that you can join us for additional conference sessions. Please remember it's not too late to sign up for a next conference session, and all sessions are being recorded for you to view later. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items to help you participate in this session. On this slide, you will see an example screenshot of your attendee interface. You should see something that looks like this on your computer desktop on the screen. For this presentation, you are listening in using your computer audio. If you are having sound issues or if the slides stop advancing, please try refreshing your browser. If that doesn't work, try logging off and logging back in. If you continue to have issues, please let us know by submitting a question, and one of our behind-the-scenes team members will try to assist you. You can also submit questions to the presenters. To ask a question, click on the question mark icon on your attendee interface and type your question into the question pane. You may send your questions in at any time during the presentation. We will try our best to answer questions as they come in and during the Q&A portion of the webinar. If we don't answer your question during the Q&A, we will provide your questions to the presenters to follow up via email following today's session. You can click on the document icon on the attendee interface to view included handouts. We do have a PDF file of the PowerPoint slides that we're using for today's presentation there in the handouts. This session is being recorded, and you will receive a link to the recording in a follow-up email along with the survey. The survey will also appear once the session ends. We value your feedback and would greatly appreciate it if you let us know how we're doing, or let us know if there's anything we can do to further assist you. And with that, I'd like to introduce our presenters. Erick Palmer came to WM in 2003. His experience with hauling, recycling, and landfilling over the years has placed him in his current role as Area Disposal Manager. In this role, he is responsible for both hazardous and non-hazardous disposal operations and market development. His passion and broad knowledge and exposure in the field has allowed him to bring notable contributions in advanced implementations. Erick earned his MBA degree at Keller Graduate School of Management, Columbus campus, after receiving a Bachelor of Science in Environmental and Hazardous Materials Management at the University of Findlay. Becky Reichenbach is a Chicago native who attended Purdue University to receive an environmental studies degree and has been working in the waste and recycling industry ever since. Becky moved to Ohio in 2020 join Rumpke, where she assists in marketing over 50,000 tons per month of recyclable commodities for Rumpke's 13 recycling plants, including glass. And Louise Bruce is the Managing Director of the Recycling Partnership's Center for Sustainable Behavior and Impact, which designs evidence-based solutions to drive measurable improvements in residential recycling behaviors and mobilize household participation in the circular economy. Louise has previously held leadership positions at the San Jose Conservation Corps, where she led zero waste and emergency operations, and at the New York City Department of Sanitation, where she advanced organics-focused initiatives from community composting to curbside collection of food waste in service of its nearly 9 million residents. She holds a Master of Urban Planning from New York University and a BA from Cornell University. And with that, I will now turn it over to our first presenter, Erick Palmer.
Thank you, April. I really appreciate that. And thank you all for signing in today to listen to these presentations, what seems to be the most gorgeous day of the year here in Ohio. We truly got some San Diego weather upon us. So thanks for logging in. You know, as this opportunity came to me, I was extremely honored. And the one thing that I really wanted to talk about is that belief that sometimes recycling just ends up in a landfill. And I think throughout the course of my career, through my social engagements, this topic keeps coming up. And when this opportunity came, I was like, man, I really want to take an academic nerdy type business management type approach to answering this for folks. Because if anybody is like me, they certainly are going to be a little bit guarded when I say, hey, no, don't worry, we're going to do the right thing. So I'm going to take this as an opportunity to start to dispel the belief that those recyclables are ending up getting trashed, which is going to force us to take a little bit of a business approach to our presentation here today. I'm hoping to get through how we manage the profitability of airspace on a landfill, what it goes into developing those landfills, of course, the cost of upkeep and monitoring, and then also that end piece. I don't think that we can explain a business model without talking about where the revenue comes from. So I'm hoping to share some information on our airspace profitability and how we look at those businesses. I think in addition to that, we need to compare that to the curbside recycling model and where we're obtaining our revenue, what those upfront costs are in developing a facility, and of course, managing those facilities and getting those products to an end user. And then I want to kind of compare the two for everyone so you start to see that this is a solution for solid waste that sits on the exact same coin, just two separate sides. So without further ado, I'll dive right into it. I'm sure you guys are all on the edge of your seat here. I'm going to talk less about the bulk commodities. You know, sometimes we call this the dump and bale type commodities, high grade commodities. That's where you have massive amounts, large amounts of recyclable commodities of a single type at a single location. And typically what happens is it's a bit of that scrap metal market kind of business model where we retrieve those recyclables, we repackage those recyclables, and we take those to market. There's less of a concern with those ending up in a landfill. The real concern is around curbside single stream materials that we all are experienced with at our own homes. And we see the same colored trucks, the same type of trucks driving down the roads, picking up our waste products as well as those recyclables in separate trucks, ideally. So with that, let's start with what the heck the landfills are all about. You know, we need to look at landfills, and really it's the process of managing airspace. And simply put, it's really how many tons of waste can we place into a landfill. This is discovered prior to us even going into operation based on the guidance of the Ohio EPA and the federal regulations. It speaks to how we place these facilities around homes, drinking water wells, aquifers, of course, other limiting factors like faults and airports play a role in that. You know, when we look at the typical landfill, for us to develop the landfill, meaning just create an acre for the waste to go into, it's going to cost us roughly around $750,000 to develop that acre. So big dollars just in the development of a single acre. Now, of course, we need to run that landfill and develop it with the waste. So to manage that day-to-day waste, it takes some really expensive stuff, right? We have to have that heavy equipment and those items. Of course, we need the qualified people that actually operate those pieces of equipment. We need folks that are certified and trained to fix the pieces of equipment. And that's really just gets us onto the playing field. Once we're on the playing field, there's things that we have to continue to manage, like the byproducts and the waste. And I want to talk specifically about the breaking down of these waste products and how that develops the second half of our revenue equation for these landfills. But as you can see here, we have to manage that leachate, which is basically the liquid ooze that is created as these waste products decompose through their life. You know, typically at these facilities, we have gas plant managers, gas techs that are dedicated to just collecting the gas and bringing it to hopefully a renewable energy system, which I'm going to talk about here in a minute. We also have a team of engineers, compliance experts, construction managers, consultants, accountants. Of course, we need sales folks to go out and find us that right material. And finally, you need folks like me that you can blame it on when things don't go as planned. So the revenue that we generate on a landfill really comes from two common sources. So we're going to receive a piece of revenue based on the ton at the front of the gate. In other words, what we're saying is that we're going to price a piece of material for what it takes to manage that material, place it in and entomb it into a landfill operation. and then what it's going to cost us to manage it throughout the life of that material. And once that airspace is exhausted, according to the state, we have to continue to monitor it, that post-closure care, for another 30 years. Now, our company policy is a little bit different than that, and it may go into perpetuity. We really don't know exactly how long that's going to go on. So when we're pricing in today's model or today's dollars, we really have to be aware of how long we're going to have this material in our management and in our care. So we have that upfront gate cost or price revenue that we're receiving. There's also that byproduct piece right now that we've really put a lot of focus on. And it serves a couple of purposes. Of course, we have this greenhouse gas initiative, right? And we are diligently focused on reducing our greenhouse gas emissions at these facilities. And the good news for us at WM is that typically is a revenue generator. So throughout our landfill, as this material decomposes, we're actually pulling that byproduct of methane gas off of the hill, and we're either running it into a high BTU gas plant where it's being cleaned up and placed into the pipeline for gas distribution where it goes to heat your homes, or it's being converted into electricity and it's getting connected to the grid and serving those homes and powering the needs. So we're looking at two areas where we're actually generating revenue: at the gate, and of course after it's been decomposed, and we're able to take those byproducts and beneficially reuse those in the way of renewable energy. I kind of overemphasize things here. So that business model really is kind of laid out in summary here. We're managing those products, and we need to price those in a way that it brings enough money to pay for all that construction, monitoring, employee, and equipment costs, and of course that post-closure care. Ideally, what we end up with is materials coming into those facilities that will decompose and generate a quality renewable energy for the site. And to give you an idea, I went out and I found this is the national average according to the US EPA. About $53 per ton in today's dollars is what the inbound material is coming in for. So as you can imagine, to monitor and manage waste products for over 30 years at $53 a ton, you got to be pretty efficient and effective at the job. So moving in and kind of holding that in your memory, we need to move into that model of product supply. And really, when we look at our recycling operations, I kind of oversimplify it sometimes. I think of it as HGTV, where you see these folks, they go out into a wonderful neighborhood, they find an undervalued asset that just doesn't look right or work right. They purchase it at a significant discount. They repackage it, of course, clean it up, and then they turn around and sell it for a premium. And really, in summary, that's exactly what we're doing with single stream and curbside recycling. We're taking an imperfect product blend, right? We're bringing it into a facility where we can clean it up and segregate it. Ultimately, we repackage it, and then we take that product to market, and we market it to the folks that need that product in bulk, which drives a premium for that product. So with that said, running these facilities are not cheap. Just last Friday, it was pretty exciting up here in the Cleveland area. We did the grand opening of our $36 million Cleveland MRF. I don't know if you guys saw it in Waste Dive. It made the news. There's some photos out there. But that full-blown single-stream state-of-the-art facility, cost us $36 million. Here's a quick view of it before it gets all dirty from processing. That's not a lick of material has touched any of those belts at this point in time. But as of today, I'm sure it looks completely different after it's been running, through the week. So the MRF operating system, in order to get that product to market, requires a lot of stuff, as you can imagine. Of course, we have that upfront conveyor and technology costs, but also we have to pay for the folks, the operators, the maintenance folks that are involved in that day-to-day piece of getting the material, what we call from the front of the building to the back of the building, and segregating it in the best way we possibly can. Of course, that meets that moment needs. There's also a whole host of sales professionals that we have that are out there trying to find high quality material. work with municipalities in order to improve those recycling markets and those recycling products. And I'm not going to go super heavy into that piece because I think once Becky gets on, you're going to hear a deep dive into recycling. She's done a phenomenal job with her presentation. You guys are going to really enjoy it. But there's a host of folks between the engineers, maintenance professionals. Of course, we also have folks that manage the people in the field. So there's a lot of operating costs that go in it. As a manufacturing environment, there's a whole host of environmental and safety regulations and standards, both internal WM and those of, say, the OSHA and the EPAs, that have to go on, which also elevates the price of operating these facilities. So the revenue model here is a twofold revenue model as well, just like the landfill. Of course, the landfill, we had it coming in the gate, and then we had the byproduct that if it works out and it's good enough, we can go ahead and turn that into renewable energies, and of course, we get paid for that commodity. Well, recycling is very similar. We have a recycling model where the product coming in, the commodities that are coming in represent a portion of a per ton rate, right? So there's, we'll go into it here in a second. Maybe it's on this next slide. Well, it isn't. So there's a percentage of material in each ton. So let's say there's 3% aluminum in every ton of single stream that comes in. Aluminum's at that $1,300 number. So that, percentage equals out to, say, $7. So you have this average per ton single stream material based on where that material is coming from and the studies that have been performed to audit it. And we establish a value for that. Now, that value doesn't offset the manufacturing and the processing costs in order to get that material segregated and to market, and of course hold a profit for our facilities. There's a charge that comes up at the front of that, right? So we have that material volume, that material value. Potentially, if that material value exceeds the processing cost, there's going to be a charge for that material to get it through the system. So there's that revenue almost at the gate, similar to that of a landfill. And of course, now we have the backside of that. We have an army of folks that are working to source material to the different mills and companies throughout the Midwest and the country to get the best value we can for that product. So we are receiving revenue from those mills based on the material quality and the quantities that we're supplying to them. So again, another two-tier revenue model, right? So managing our dream is we want to manage the materials, the single stream, the curbside material with very little residue in it or waste product in it, out of program product in it. With that out of program product, it really drives up the operating costs for those facilities and the processing costs. It delays the plant, so it has plant downtime. And of course, all those items in there are still requiring payment for their time inside that building, whether it's assets or people. It places our employees at a higher risk when they have to deal with the damage that waste products bring to those facilities. Just merely stopping and climbing into pieces of equipment in order to get them cleared and unjammed causes a bit of a safety risk. And so that kind of elevates our concern, right? And then lastly, typically it's the out of program items that decrease the overall value of your recycling stream coming from the curbside because it's waste, and waste leaves as a cost to these recycling facilities. So as we compare the recycling facilities, right, and the solid waste facilities, I put together this 10-year average that kind of starts to tell the story. So on the left, you see the commodity. In the center, you see what it's allocated, how much per ton that product actually represents, and based on that percentage, the dollar value. So you see there the ONP, which is the news. It represents a little bit south of 14%, 13.5% of the overall 1-ton package that we see in that inbound single stream product. And it holds a value of about $49. So as we traverse down this spreadsheet here, you notice on the as we traverse to the right, there's a big bold $69.54. That really represents what the average blend of material has been and the value of that material over the last 10 years. So in other words, we can receive at one of our recycling facilities $69 today and 54 cents for that product, send it off to the market, probably gain a little bit of extra revenue as a result of our premiums in selling it in bulk. Or we can take that product and stick it in a landfill and hope that it decomposes while it's eating up our valuable airspace. Now, if you notice the organics up on top, your paper, cardboard, OCC, and mixed paper, you know, they decompose relatively quick, and that's attractive. But that also comes with an aluminum can that's going to take us 500 years for it to decompose, right? So we're going to have to manage that product for an extremely long time and hope that it generates enough methane to pay for itself over that time. And if you remember, that gate rate that we're receiving on average per ton is $53. So as we kind of compare the two, it kind of starts to tell the story. It really is not in the interest of the solid waste companies to take recyclable material and place them in and use up valuable landfill airspace with product that we're not going to get a premium for, that's going to take an extremely long, several lifetimes to decompose before we can potentially get any methane off of that product. And then conversely, placing waste inside that recycling facility doesn't do us any good, because all it does is drive the costs up, creates a less safe environment for our employees, and increases the overall disposal and processing costs for the end user and the customer. So with that, in summary, I just want to make sure that you guys understand, it's not just me standing up here saying, oh, trust me, we're not throwing recyclables away. There's a significant and an important business model, a profitability model that goes into this, and really is discouraging us from ever wanting to do that, let alone having high integrity and searching for a more circular industry that we have here in the state of Ohio. That ends my portion of the presentation. I believe I'm going to turn it over to Becky at this point, and Becky's going to walk through some of the specifics around the actual MRF shed and MRF itself. So thank you very much for your time.
Great, thank you so much, Eric. Becky, again, just let us know. We'll go ahead and advance to this slide. So if you just want to say next slide, Travis will control your slides for you.
All right, thank you. And yeah, I second Eric. It is a beautiful day in Ohio today. And Eric, congrats on the new facility. It's amazing to have more resources in Ohio, so congrats on that.
Thank you so much.
Yep, thanks, Eric. So I'll go over, I think April already gave my background, but yeah, how recycling works. At Rumpke, we really depend on our regional operation, which we call our MRF sheds, what happens at our plants, and then we'll spend some time talking about our markets and end users. Go ahead, Travis. So when that slide comes up, so in all, actually, since I sent my bio in for this several weeks ago, we acquired our 14th recycling plant. So Rumpke does have 14 recycling plants. 2 of those are what we consider MRFs, which are material recovery facilities that are laser focused on sorting of the post-consumer single stream. I loved again that Eric called it the imperfect product. So 2 of the 14 are MRFs. It was already mentioned, one of the recycling plants is our glass recycling plant in Dayton, that we are very passionate about keeping glass out of our landfills and in the circular economy. And we share operating landfills. We currently have 14 of those. And we do absolutely, as Eric said, do not want any recoverable items taking up space in our landfills. And you can advance, Travis. So we operate we have the two MRFs, Cincinnati, Columbus, and you can see there's an oval around our Columbus MRF shed, and there is another oval that would be the Cincinnati MRF shed. So we use the MRF shed models. It's a multi-pronged approach: communication, education, and sharing with the communities we serve. And I think one more slide, Travis. We have a hub and spoke method of transporting materials within our MRF sheds. So a great example of this is in our Louisville, Kentucky area. We have routes picking up materials. We collect those materials at our location in Louisville, where they are consolidated for transport in bulk to our Cincinnati MRFs. So again, that's the hub and spoke method to get materials to our facilities. And the second bullet there is really what is key to this MRF shed model, is the working with the communities through meetings, trainings, different events. Recently, we added polypropylene in 2021 and cups to our acceptables list in 2022. And what we do in advance of adding those items is we gather members of each MRF shed. During COVID, it may have been virtual. Today, we do them all in person, but we gather them and we talk about these new acceptable items. And we brainstorm what could be potential hurdles to rolling out, adding those items to our acceptables list. And we also collaborate with our communities on communication to the public or the residents in the MRF sheds. That's a key piece to the success of making this product less imperfect. Another great example, actually next week in Cincinnati, we're hosting our Cincinnati MRF shed. We're doing an educational seminar specifically about the emerging chemical recyclers or non-mechanical. We actually have several of these projects in Ohio, so we feel it's important to learn all we can about them and share all of that information with our MRF sheds, as it could shape the future of, what we're recycling or what we could possibly add. Both of our MRF sheds employ teams within Rumpke as they're part of our communications team that provide tours. They provide tours at any of our plants. Mainly, those tours are done at our MRFs. They do tours nearly every day of the week, and that is a critical part to having any group or the public seeing what's happening in our facilities to help drive more recycling and better quality. Okay, Travis. So what is the objective, right? It's at the MRFs. It's to safely and efficiently capture all of the commodities from an inbound imperfect product. We're capturing them from that stream, any commodity that has an end market. So so that's the objective. And you'll see in this slide, this is a schematic of our under construction MRF in Columbus. So the sorting process is done via human and mechanical. One note, if you look at our current MRF in Columbus, we currently have 38 employees just for sortation. And in this new model, we will have 14. So we will be depending more on mechanical and optical sortation. We will have 19 optical sorters in this facility, and they will be sorting, and they will also be doing quality sorts on materials. So we're definitely hoping to make a better quality product. We do, let's see, human function, quality, and contamination. We heavily rely on our communications team to educate the public, and I spoke a little bit about that on our MRF sheds. They do a lot of working with them. Recently, this was a great tidbit. So our maintenance team in Columbus, Erick talked a lot about the maintenance of these facilities. We have a team too. they reported that in the last quarter, they had 921 breakdowns due to a single item of bed sheets being in the stream and tangling our equipment. Each one of those breakdowns took an average of 8 minutes to get unjammed. So we take data and we go and we share that amongst our team at Rumpke, and then our communication team goes to the public. So quality on the inbound is a constant communication. We're constantly looking at trends of what's happening and trying to get the word out to the public. We also focus on quality on the outbounds, which I'll get into that. That's heavily my role at Rumpke, but we have deep long-term relationships with each one of our users in the market, and we do regularly ask and receive their honest feedback on quality. It's very important on both sides of that equation of quality, the inbound and the outbound. And then safety is critical. I'm so happy Erick spoke a lot about this. There's a lot of risk to our humans, both our sortation folks and our maintenance folks in facilities. We do have safety teams at both MRFs. Of course, they're reacting to things, but we do to try to proactively do audits at all of our facilities to try to prevent possible hazards. And the last bullet, MRFs are definitely capital intensive. Our Cincinnati MRF just hit its 10-year-old mark, and we've had to do several multi-million-dollar upgrades there. As recently as this summer, we just completed an upgrade in Cincinnati, and this is due to that imperfect product and the hard nature of this business, as well as the changing stream, which I'll talk about in another slide. I also want to mention the capital at our glass plant. We have to budget major capital at our glass plant due to the abrasive nature of glass. That still doesn't scare us. We are still passionate about glass and capturing it all and recycling it, but definitely this line of business, very capital intensive. A couple notes on this slide. If you look along the top, there's a long horizontal teal line. That is the entire length of the plant, a viewing platform, so that we will be able to give tours like we do today. But in this new plant, it'll be a one-level walking path that any group or resident can walk the entire length of the plant to learn about what happens in the MRF. And actually number 7 is at the top there is our education center. That, again, is a critical piece to helping the stream stay robust and as clean as possible. Next, Travis. So a key thing is operating plants in an economically sustainable manner. Erick laid out how there's the inbound cost and then the potential outbound revenue. So we have to have economical, a profit situation in order to be able to keep upgrading, investing capital in upgrades. A large factor today for us that we're keeping our eye on is that third bullet, the evolving single stream ton. So this breakdown, this chart, I actually grabbed from 2018. So in 2018, we characterized the single stream ton in this chart below. So remember, we're just talking about a 5-year difference here. So today, I can tell you in the single stream ton, we consider that there's zero newsprint, right? Because that stream, the newspaper world, has literally evaporated in the last 5 years. And what newspaper there is today, it is going into our mixed paper, which is the third line there. Now, fast forward to today, we are starting to see a rapid decline in mixed paper. So I mean, this is a perfect example of what we're seeing. So in May of 23, Kroger, who is the largest grocery chain in the U.S., completely ceased printing their weekly circulars, right? So it's all on an app. There's no more circular being printed for Kroger, the largest grocery chain in the U.S. I also read in a lot of trade publications the decline of magazines and catalogs because they're all going digital as well. So I think that mixed paper, that number is dropping rather quickly. We're seeing that go down. And then if you look at the non-paper, the plastics primarily, we saw a pretty big shift during COVID and post-COVID. A lot of folks switched to single-use plastics, or they did a lot of carry-out food. So we do have data that the plastics are rapidly changing, and that we keep that all in mind when we do upgrades at our facilities. We basically, our plastic line in Cincinnati was completely overwhelmed. So that was part of the upgrade that we did this summer, is trying to widen that because there's just way more plastics in the stream. And I think we'll possibly see that declining of paper, not the cardboard boxes from e-commerce, but the other paper grades. Next slide, Travis. So once our plants safely and efficiently sort the materials, that's where I kind of pick up the baton at Rumpke and I go to the market. And a pillar for us is having sustainable long-term markets for our commodities. We have multiple markets for each of our commodities. Me and my team, we physically visit our end user facilities. This is a requirement for Rumpke. We must absolutely see that our users are doing what they say with all of our materials that we move. That is just something that is a non-negotiable, that we can at any time want to go to a paper mill or a plastics user or a metal person. And we actually require that they visit us routinely as well. As I mentioned, every commodity, we have multiple users. That's critical for us. We move a lot of tons, and if we just, hoped on one single user for a commodity, that could present problems for us. So multiple users for every commodity is also something that we, require. Due to space at both of our MRFs, we do operate our inventory on a just-in-time movement. Many of our high-moving grades move within 24 hours or less. So this takes a lot of coordination between myself, our plant operations teams, and of course our users and our transportation folks who keep all of those tons moving. We constantly look at residuals, right? And this is evolving as the ton changes, the residual changes. So any item that made it to the end of the line that hadn't been sorted either by a human or an optic or a mechanical method, we have to critically and carefully look at that. Maybe some of it is trash, right, from our wish cyclers out there. That's a real thing. But we need to look and say what marketable, recoverable commodities are still making it into that residual. And we have to look at options, investment, changing belts, adding optics to target that residual to keep it at a low percent, or we won't be economically sustainable for the future. One note, in our new Columbus plant, we are adding a kind of redundancy line. So any item that made it to quote unquote the end of the line is going to be put on another belt to go back to the beginning of the process to ensure an entire second chance of recovery. So we're very excited, both with the new facility and what projects we've had in Cincinnati, to get our residual percentage lower by the minute. And next, Travis. So the market value of each commodity, right, at a high level, it should represent the global supply and demand balance, or sometimes we call it the generation versus the appetite of the users. This sometimes can get skewed, especially in plastics. Right now, we're seeing a very inexpensive, readily available supply of virgin resin. So unfortunately, we see and we read in publications that some plastics users will switch to virgin because of it being so readily available and so incredibly inexpensive. These scenarios really leave any MRF system in a bind when they can easily substitute virgin for the post-consumer product. On the fiber side of the market, it is exciting times. We have had multiple new domestic mill projects come online last year and this year, which we're hoping provide lift to the market, right? Because it's more appetite for the material that's being generated. You can see we had some very disappointing times. The orange line on there is mixed paper, where it was zero, very low price through the beginning of 2023. So we're really hoping that these new capacities coming online will provide a lift to that pricing. And, you know, it is, we're optimistic about it. We need robust markets to sustain, you know, our MRFs and keep investing. All right, next, Travis. And this last slide really brings it home for us. We published this slide on our social media, our communications team. So we are so proud of this visual. This summarizes Ohio's circular economy, right? Every one of these arrows is pointing to a user where we ship materials. And you can see all of the arrows in Ohio. It's incredible. And we're very proud, even the tons that we ship to Indiana, Northern Kentucky, those are very important to us as well. And we consider those, you know, absolute wins. I can also share with you, we're aware of several projects where shovels are in the ground or shovels will be in the ground for new users who are building or looking to build in Ohio. So this is a very exciting time, especially for Ohio, what we have already. You know, you look at WM's new MRF, our new MRF, a lot of users and more users to come. So I hope you all learned a lot from this, and I hope you enjoy the afternoon, and I will hand it off from here.
Thank you so much, Becky. Next up, we have Louise Bruce from the Recycling Partnership. Travis can take a break. I think Louise should be able to advance her slides on her own here. So I will let you take it.
Thanks so much, April. I just want to do a sound check, make sure I'm coming through.
Yep, we hear you just fine.
All right, awesome. Well, so first, I just want to just say how grateful I am to be a part of this wonderful panel. Thank you so much, April and Travis and Jessica and Rachel from the Ohio EPA team. It's really great to be in this conversation, and then I'm so delighted to be joining Becky and Eric. I'm going to be shifting perspectives a little bit to talk about this issue of confidence from the resident perspective. And I really hope that our audience leaves with, you know, really just two major takeaways. I think the first is that resident confidence is a really critical issue. We need to be tracking it. And just by the participation in today's webinar and this cool attentiveness percentage that I get to see here on the screen, I can tell that Ohio is taking this really seriously, which is very encouraging to me. And the second key takeaway is that while this is an enormous challenge, our research is showing that we can successfully respond to eroding levels of confidence, and we can do that with data and evidence. So Erick, just a kind of throwback to your comment about taking an academic approach to this work. So with that, I'll dive in, although I seem to be.
Yeah, Louise, we seem to be having more technical difficulties than we thought. So the system isn't letting us give you control. So I spoke too soon. Travis is back in charge of clicking for you. So just give him a little heads up and he'll click through for you. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Travis. So just before I dig into the research about resident confidence, I wanted to share a little bit about the Recycling Partnership. For those of you who don't know us, we work with stakeholders across the recycling value chain to drive recycling rates nationally. So we're a grant maker. We provide data and evidence and research to help optimize local recycling programs. And then we work with, as I said, other stakeholders across the value chain, like companies, to offer solutions and help make sure that the packaging getting introduced into the system is meeting the highest possible standards. Next slide. Today, I'm going to talk specifically as a member of our Center for Sustainable Behavior and Impact, which is an initiative we launched last year to drive measurable improvement in residential recycling behaviors. We have 4 key objectives, if you will. The first being restore confidence, so we'll dig in deeply on that today. The second is that we are laser focused on advancing equitable solutions, making it possible for all people to recycle as much as they can. We are, as I'll show you in the research, focused not just on understanding what people say they need and want, but really looking at how we can use solutions to increase capture and participation. So what I mean by that is drive behavior change at the bin. And that while we're doing that, while we're focusing on driving more material into the system, that we're staying focused on making sure that it's the right materials, and so that we're improving the quality of what people are putting in the recycling bin and decreasing contamination behaviors. Next slide. So why is the Recycling Partnership focused on public confidence in recycling? I want to take a step back and show you what we see in our data about how households are participating. So if you go to the next slide, Travis. This will come as no surprise, but when we look at recycling, we see a very significant intention action gap. So what I mean by that is that despite consistently high levels of public support for recycling as a concept, as an institution, we have measured that among households that have access to curbside collection or convenient collection of recyclables that is on par with their trash. So for a moment, sort of zeroing in on that part of the population that has solid access to a strong program, we're still seeing that half of all residential recyclables are lost to landfills due to what we have observed to be behavior gaps. At the national level, that adds up to about 15 million tons of recyclables, or the equivalent of 63 million metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. So really an enormous amount of material that if we can focus in on behaviors, if we can focus on what helps people participate to the greatest extent, that we could capture with no additional access points. Now, that's not to say that the partnership is very focused on adding access, but we want to make sure that where we have opened up access, where we do have strong programs, that we're really maximizing the return on that investment. Next slide. So what is this? This slide really is to sort of paint a more detailed picture of the stats I shared on the previous slide. So we've measured that the average US household generates somewhere around 750 to 800 pounds of recyclables per year. When you level that up to about 10 homes, so this top graphic here, you see, say 10 average homes that have access to curbside collection of recyclables are generating, say, around 7,600 pounds of recyclable materials per year. We know from our grant making and measurement that we've done on the ground that somewhere around a third of those households aren't participating at all. And so right there, we lose about 2,100 pounds of recyclables off the bat. Then if you look closely at those 7 households, or 70% of households that are participating, on average, we're still losing about 40% of their recyclables, here more specifically 38.5% of their recyclables, to the trash. And so that's another 2,100 pounds lost due to sort of incomplete participation, if you will. So overall, you see how we quickly get to about 50% of the materials that our programs are accepting, lost to landfills due to, again, what we call behavior gaps. On the right-hand side of the screen, this shows you, we conduct capture rate studies across the country, looking at how much of the material generated by homes are we actually capturing. And so this gives you about an average for the country. And so you see it by material where if you dig in at the material level, you see a very different story, say for cardboard than for polypropylene containers. Next slide. So what are we doing about that? So we have been very busy trying to get at, in an evidence-backed way, what is driving this and how can we intervene? This is a slide with a whole lot of information, but what I really want you to take away from this is that we're not just focused, as I said earlier, on self-reported information, but we really want to get to what actually changes behavior. So what actually makes the difference between someone looking at a material, understanding where it should go, and putting it in the right bin. And so to get at that, in our first sort of, our early stage with the center, we completed a very significant body of research that's detailed on this slide. I don't want you to worry about diving in too deeply, but because I can share copies. Some of this is in the attachments, but I can share copies of all of this research with you. But just to paint a picture, we surveyed somewhere around 10,000 Americans through an audience segmentation that looked at who are our recyclers and what motivates them. We went into people's homes and used a research tactic called ethnography to understand how materials are flowing through households and what contributes to successful recycling. We, as I noted, are very focused on equity, so we've made sure to survey U.S. BIPOC residents. We've looked at the impact of, or how people understand packaging and labeling, and then we, as I'll show you here, we conducted the first what we're calling Recycling Confidence Index nationally. We used all of that information that we learned about people and what they're asking for, and we developed 23 intervention strategies, which we then deployed in 52,000 U.S. households. And you'll see 2 of those studies, 2 of our actually very successful studies, were conducted in Reynoldsburg and Cincinnati, Ohio. Next slide. So what has come out of that research is what we call our 2023 Knowledge Report, which is available for download on our website. But really, I think the major theme here is that it is clear from our research that people intend to recycle. They highly value recycling as a service, as a program in their community. And we believe at the Recycling Partnership that we must collectively clear the way for them to act. And so we've identified a number of themes, or sort of a recipe, if you will, that we think will help residents become more engaged in their recycling programs. We know we need more systematic communications. We know we need to make sure those communications are tailored to different audiences. And we know that we need to make sure that the context in which people are recycling is designed with behavior in mind. So what are the tools, the in-home bins, kind of the flows we're helping people build in their homes. But really at the heart of all of that is that people must have confidence in recycling outcomes. And I'm going to take the next few slides to show you why we are making that statement and really digging in on this idea of confidence. So we go to the next slide, Travis. So this is one of our surveys that we conducted that we call the Recycling Confidence Index. It's a national survey of 3,100 Americans, and our goal here was to understand what is driving people's confidence in recycling so that we as an industry can make more strategic decisions about how to positively influence it. The Recycling Confidence Index, this first survey establishes a baseline or a benchmark for confidence in recycling, and then we're hoping to be able to run this repeatedly so that we can see how confidence nationally is shifting. Next slide. Okay, so this is a look at, or sort of a visual of what the Recycling Confidence Index looks like. We sort of I think it's really important to point out here that when we at the partnership talk about confidence, we're talking about both my confidence in the system and its ability to deliver on the promise of recycling my materials, making them into new things, as well as my confidence in my own ability to participate. We see those as equally important, and that together they're sort of two halves of what drives sort of overall trust in the system. What you see here is that the index itself is made up of 10 factors. Half of those are what we call our practical factors. They describe they're sort of the nuts and bolts, if you will, or sort of they describe sort of the day-to-day experience of participating in recycling. So we ask questions like, do you have everything you need to do a good job of recycling? Are you receiving communications about how to participate? Are you satisfied with your local recycling program, and so forth? On the right-hand side, we have what we call our perceptive factors. And these are the factors that describe essentially my sort of how I value recycling, or what worth it has, what impact I believe it has. And so we ask questions like, do you believe recycling, your recyclables are made into new things? Do you sort of, what is your impression of the recycling system's ability to make a difference? Does it have a positive impact, and so forth? Is it worth the effort? So we'll go to the next slide. We can see our results. I like to think about this a little bit like a credit score. So if you'll see in the center that our initial read of the Recycling Confidence Index was 630 points, so out of 1,000, which is pretty good, but shows that we have very significant room for improvement. And I think the other thing worth noting, or a big takeaway for us as the Recycling Partnership, which relates strongly to this intention action gap, is that the perception-based factors, so my belief that recycling is worth the effort, that it has a positive impact, rated significantly higher than the programmatic factors, like that I have all that I need to participate, for instance. I'm going to take, so I think we really want to, what's a sort of silver lining here, I guess I should say, is that the programmatic factors, we believe we more immediately control, right? So we can control how much our residents are hearing from us. We can control how transparent we are being about where our materials go. We can control what tools we're deploying to our communities. And so while, we would like to see this number be higher, we believe that that's actually something that we can do. And so for the next few slides, I'm going to sort of walk us through some of the key insights, and then ultimately land on what can we do about this, or what does the research show us is a sort of pathway forward. Next slide. So our first key insight is that abstractly, confidence in recycling as a social good is very high. So, the vast majority of survey respondents, and ultimately of Americans, think that recycling makes a difference. Recycling is worth the effort. But when we more tangibly try, ask them to dig in to tell us about, what they believe happens to the recyclables that they put at the curb, this is where we start to see confidence fade. So for instance, only half of survey respondents believe that recyclables are made into new things. And this chart here is a little bit hard to read, but you can see how we compared those three questions. Recycling makes a difference, it's worth the effort, and made into new things. And you can see how there's a kind of becomes new things is really an outlier. We have a whole lot of Americans who are unsure about this. And we believe that this is a trend in decline based on research that we've seen from partner organizations, and not just one that's in decline nationally, but one that's in decline globally. So I think this gets at why we're so concerned. If people stop believing in sort of the ultimate promise that recycling gives, that your items are going to be made into new things, that we will have a really hard time winning them back. And we're seeing that confidence in and the outcome of recycling appears to be correlated to my habits, so how much I participate. And so we worry that, as confidence erodes, that participation may erode too. I think just to add another stat to that, we saw that very few people, just about 17%, feel very well informed about what happens to their recycling. And so there's just a huge opportunity here to improve trust by increasing the transparency around what happens to recyclables when they leave home. And I just love that graphic that Becky showed that shows where the materials from Rumpke are going. And I'll talk a little bit about how we can, we just need to sort of scale or make sure that we're getting those messages out through the right channels so that people are seeing them. Next slide. Our second key insight is that the highest levels of confidence exist where individuals receive support. So only 1 in 4 participants can recall receiving a communication, and only about half reported that they have in-home bins to collect their recyclables. But those who had both, so those who could recall communications and had at least one in-home bin, were almost 2 times as likely to rate their confidence in their own recycling knowledge as above average. So, the big takeaway here is that where we're delivering supports, it's working, and it's particularly working on that half of the coin of confidence that's so important is my self-confidence, my sense that I have a sort of high knowledge of how to participate and that I'm participating effectively. Next slide. Then our third key insight is that is sort of the flip of the last one. And I just really want to emphasize that while 1 in 4 can, or I'll take a step back and say that 75% of Americans cannot recall receiving a communication about their local recycling program. In some cases, that's because they are not receiving them. We find at the Recycling Partnership that far too many programs are under-resourced and they're outreach and aren't able to do the outreach and education that they would like to do, to be able to do that storytelling about their program. Or it could be also that we're not designing communications in a way that's getting noticed. And I'll talk in a few moments about some work that we've done actually in Ohio and Reynoldsburg, where we deployed messaging and we were able to see that certain messages seem to be noticed much more strongly than others. And so it's both that we need to be communicating more consistently and we need to be communicating in a way that gets noticed. But the good news here is that 25%, or that group that can recall receiving communications, is again demonstrating much higher levels of confidence, not just, as I said in the previous slide, in their own ability to participate, but in the broader system. And so we see that communications positively impact confidence. They also positively impact service satisfaction. So we find that people who can recall receiving communications are much more likely to demonstrate satisfaction with their local recycling program. And then that third key pillar, which is communications, appear to drive behavior change. There's again a lot of probably too much information on this slide, but I did want to read that we had a couple of great quotes that came from some of the focus group conversations that we had. So for instance, that really illustrate this third key insight. One is we had one participant say, "I need some data. I need to know that you're not just picking my stuff to make me happy and dumping it somewhere." And then another participant shared that if I was better informed, maybe I would be able to explain better to the other members of my family. Then they'll have no reason not to recycle. I think this one is really key. In separate research in the ethnography that I mentioned, we found that quite a few people were sort of playing the role in their household of recycling champion. And the more we can help bolster that person, help support them and give them stories to tell or evidence to share about their local recycling program, the more successful they'll be in being the sort of household ambassador for us. Next slide. So just to recap here, we coming out of this survey, we saw 3 key areas of opportunity for restoring confidence. And so the first one is we must tell local truths about recycling that counteract the flow of recycling myths and misinformation. And then if we do that at the local level, we believe we can be successful. People are listening, and they want to know. I love all those tours that we're hearing about, and the specific stories that are coming. That one about bed sheets, for instance. I think all of that, those local truths, are really helping to build confidence. We need to reinforce confidence and satisfaction with feedback to participating recyclers. So this gets at, a little bit also at that sort of helping the household champions, but finding ways to be interactive in our communications and deliver information about how well things are going to our residents. And then the third is that we should be a partner with in helping people overcome recycling barriers, and we can do that by working on that other piece of sort of the context. So are we offering convenient, regular, reliable service? Are we providing in-home supports? Are we helping people think about the flow of recyclables through their home? And we see that as we help people overcome those barriers, they are, again, demonstrating higher levels of confidence. But I say, pairing this survey with other research, we see that it's really important that we think about or really do the sort of upfront research of understanding what are the messages, or how can we really capture people's attention so that we can effectively deploy these messages and tell these local truths. And so I don't have a slide in here, but just wanted to quickly mention that in Reynoldsburg, Ohio, we deployed 3 different messages that seemed to resonate with some key recycler groups that we felt were feeling more disengaged with the recycling system. We deployed an empathetic message. We deployed an emotional message that looks at sort of kind of the looming kind of environmental crisis, is asked what, ever wonder what tomorrow will bring, and shows a landfill overtaking a hillside. And then we deployed a kind of more traditional environmental message that says, recycling makes sense, and here are the environmental benefits. And we found that first empathetic message had a very statistically significant increase on recycling participation. Whereas the other, the logical message that sort of talked about the benefits of recycling did not. And so we are doing a webinar actually next week on that messaging that maybe I'll put in the chat, but just wanted to mention that how we deploy these messages really does matter. So it's both that we need to be telling the story, but we also need to be making sure that we're designing communications that break through in the incredibly loud sort of communications environment that we all live in now. Next slide. And so that I just wanted to put in a quick plug here that our goal at the Center for Sustainable Behavior and Impact is not just well, first and foremost is to really generate the evidence that local programs need to improve their resident engagement, communications, and outreach programs, but also to make sure that we're getting that information out quickly to everyone so that you can so that all of our partners can start acting on that on the ground. And so we're just about to launch and kind of giving you an early access to what we're calling our Recycling Program Solutions Hub, which is a online tool where you can access all of our research and all of the data that the Recycling Partnership has on local recycling programs. And I'll put the link in the chat, but if you're able to scan a QR code, you can also scan this here to join. Thanks so much. Thanks, all.
Thank you so much, Louise, Becky, and Eric. Those were really great presentations. We are now going to have the presenters answer some questions that were submitted during today's presentation. As a reminder, you can still submit those questions through the question pane. We'll do our best to answer as many as possible. If we don't answer your question during the Q&A portion live, or if we've already answered it, fantastic. If we can't, if we haven't gotten to them, because we do have quite a few questions coming in, we will send those to the presenters after this session, and they'll be able to follow up with you via email. So let's see. Okay, here's one. Eric, I'm going to direct this to you, but this might be something that Becky can answer too. Kind of on this whole thought process of, you're telling us that recyclables shouldn't go in the landfill, they're not good to be in the landfill, and then they need to be used to offset the facility costs of your MRFs. But yeah, we're still hearing about municipalities that are kind of ending recycling programs and just telling people to put those in the trash. Do we have any thoughts on why that's happening?
Yeah, I'll start it. Maybe Becky wants to finish it. I think one of the pieces that we need to look at is when a recycling program actually fails, right? There is just too much contamination in there, and maybe it's a lack of education and understanding that Louise spoke to just recently, and that it becomes such a heavy burden that it is not sustainable, and we cannot continue to do it. You're seeing those municipalities flip over, and unfortunately, it's placing some of that recyclable, reusable products into the, they ultimately end up in a landfill, and it's really disappointing. Becky, did you want to expound upon that from your view, strictly from the recycling side of it?
Yes, I think we do see that in some communities, right? And we both touched on it. The labor human factor in MRFs is not easy. It is a challenging position to keep filled, as well as the changing stream and the having capital of some small local, I'll call them sorting centers. These are difficult. And when the commodity value goes to zero, how possibly could a small, super localized, recycling center survive that? It's very difficult, and the tough markets really, make that a challenge for some of those small. Now, we all the haulers, we have the hub and spoke method, so we're always looking at some of the small reaching locations. If we can fold them into our hub and spoke, that we feel is a viable option.
Great, thank you. Let's see. Okay, here's one. I know I live in Columbus, so Rumpke takes my recycling, and I know you've recently added some new things, some new items to the accepted list, which was super exciting. So Becky, maybe you could talk a little bit about that, and then maybe any more items that you guys are looking at, any potential items that you're looking to add. I think that'd be really important. And then of course, Erick too, after if WM is looking to do the same, we'd love to hear about that.
Absolutely. Definitely we are looking at multiple items to be added. And it's a two-part challenge, right? Are we able to safely sort that at our facilities? So do we have space? In our current Columbus plant, we are absolutely out of space, which is why we're building a new one that will have many extra bunkers or, dividers to sort many new today commodities and even in the future. And we are cognizant of our, 10-year-old facility in Cincinnati. How do we add items there when we don't have any additional bunker space? So we have to get creative. So there's the plant side of adding items. And then, I mentioned we need multiple markets. So some of the items we are looking at are emerging markets. So we're keeping our eye as, and it's primarily in plastics, right? As a lot of these companies are building facilities, they're starting to procure feedstocks for their processes. So, it is a two-part issue that we look at. And when both of those, all the boxes are checked, then absolutely we are going to be adding items as soon as we get box checked on a couple of plastic items.
Here, Becky, I can pick up where you left off. WM is in this business, right? So wherever we can find sustainable markets and opportunities, that's where we want to be. A significant amount of time, as Becky alluded, is spent on the back half of our systems, verifying that what we see that doesn't have a home couldn't potentially have a home. And so we're constantly vetting and attempting to find new markets for these products. It's kind of the evolution of our business to try and keep up with those consumer needs and those packaging needs. So much like Rumpke, this is a prime focus for us. It's a big piece of our business, and that's how we look at some of our future growth within the recycling world.
Great, thanks. And I had there's another question that kind of goes along with that. We talk about the plastics and the kind of, the lower value, I don't know if that's the best term to use, but the plastics that aren't as easy to recycle. And if we don't have markets for those, or we're not able to sort them, like what is happening with those currently?
Yeah, residuals today that go off the end of the line do go to a landfill situation. We do a lot of work in this space. I mentioned the chemical recyclers. So we do keep abreast of those. None of them are full bore running and consuming a lot of tons at this exact moment in time. But like I said, we vet those very, very carefully. And when they have progressed to actually consuming tons, we will consider that, because we do want to keep carefully vetted solutions to reduce residuals out of our landfills.
Becky, do you want to kind of talk a little bit more about that chemical recycling? I know you mentioned it, but I know you guys didn't focus too much on that. So maybe talk a little bit about what chemical recycling.
Yeah, so everything we ship now goes to mechanical recycling. So, the best example is a paper mill. They're putting the paper in a pulper with water, and, they clean it, and at the end of the roll, they're making rolls of paper. So we call that mechanical. So there is a very large emerging field of non-mechanical or chemical recyclers. Within that lane, there are, I think, like 4 or 5 different methods. Probably maybe folks on this call have heard of pyrolysis, right? Or purification or methanolysis. So there are different swim lanes within this chemical recycling space, and they're more or less breaking down plastic, which all came from oil, back into oil to either use it for fuel, or several of them are taking that then oil and turning it back into resin to make a new plastic product. So there are, it's a lot of, I guess, chemistry in each of those swim lanes. We have several of these projects right in, I'll call it the Ohio Valley in our state and in surrounding states. And, as soon as they become viable, we're transparent. We would share that. In fact, several of the chemical recyclers are speaking at our Cincinnati MRF Shed meeting next week. So we do feel this very likely could be part of the future once everything is vetted.
Great, thank you. Okay, I have an easy one now. This is an easy one. How clean do the items have to be? Do they have to be like washed out with water and detergent? I get pretty clean with mine, but just curious, somebody was wanting to know, how clean do they have to be? Do they have to be like washed, or can they just be kind of wiped clean?
I think our general stance is loose in the bin, free of residue. The inherent nature of this imperfect product is that it does have water, soda, or orange juice, that I think residue. I know specifically on plastics today, many of our mechanical users have the method that they know there's going to be a little orange juice residue or laundry detergent residue within or on those bottles. So today, our users are equipped to handle that, but we do ask them to be clean and loose in your recycling bins.
Yeah, Becky, and I'll echo that for WM. Yeah, reasonably clean. We really don't run into a whole lot of full cans of beer or bottles of wine in our facilities. Those seem to be other products that if they could just get the residual and residue materials off of those, it's great. You don't have to go as far as running your pickle jar through the dishwasher like my mother does, but if you want to, you're certainly welcome.
And I feel like the whole pizza box thing has kind of led to some confusion. Let's clear this up for the audience once and for all. Our pizza box is recyclable.
At our facilities, they are recyclable, yes.
As long as there's no pizza left, right? I think we can deal with some grease, just no pizza, right?
Exactly.
Great. Okay, let's switch. I've got some questions for Louise. Specifically, there's been a couple questions coming in about some of the studying that you do on the behavior. I think this one's very interesting. I love this question too. I don't know if you have the answer, but Louise, have you guys done any? Do you have any data that you've collected about what age recycles best? Like, what age of a person, I guess. Who is it, in a house that's the best recycler?
It's a great question. So what we did do, so I can't give you an age that's the best recycler, but we did conduct a national audience segmentation, which I didn't, go into detail on here, but it did show that about 50% of the population is very engaged. We call them those two segments we call our eco activators and our committed followers. But so they're the ones who are going to find out about how to either come into compliance or participate in their program. They're sort of driven by different motivators, but they're very much kind of engaged with us. And actually, what was interesting is this other 50%, which is made up of 3 motivational segments. To one we call our conflicted and overwhelmed, and the other group is our self-doubters, and both of those actually skew younger. So that was sort of a long way of saying that while I don't know who's actually performing the best, if we could say that there was one sort of age, I think we're finding that younger people are actually sort of really do need assurance that we are delivering on the sort of promise we're making when we're asking them to participate in recycling programs. And they're the ones who are consuming a lot of the information online or, via social media that's, causing them to sort of question whether their participation is really worth it. The caveat there I want to say is that we didn't actually see strong demographic trends in our segmentation, only sort of like slight. So when I say those groups are younger, it's sort of only a slight trend. So I think, key takeaway, key answer would be we do need to focus on making sure we're assuring really all Americans, but that we do have a focus on younger participants in our recycling programs. And if you're interested in digging in more on that, we'd love to invite you again to that webinar that we're doing next week, where we're going to be presenting our audience segmentation and then some of the successful messaging we've been able to deploy.
Right. And speaking of that, I don't want to steal your thunder from next week's webinar, but I know that you have done some work here recently in Ohio. The Recycling Partnership is a nationwide organization, but you did some behavioral studies here in my backyard. You're in Reynoldsburg, and I think in Cincinnati. So maybe you could just tell us just a little bit more about that and some brief takeaways. I know you mentioned what messaging works, but if you've got any other things you wanted to add with that.
Yeah, I'll just first of all say we love working in Ohio. It's been so great to partner with some of the various communities on some of this research. So we did a couple of things. One, that ethnographic research that I mentioned earlier, where we went into homes to look at how materials are, like, sort of what's our relationship with materials? How are they flowing through our homes? What are some successful strategies people are deploying? And that was conducted in Columbus. And I think some of the key takeaways there are just how tied this is actually to sort of this concept of housekeeping excellence. So, we're seeing a lot of TV shows and kind of an interest in this world of home organization and how do I signal to those who come into my home and my family members how things, operate in my home. And recycling is very tied to that. So that's some great research that I believe is in the handout section. We also conducted, as I said, a pilot around motivational messaging in Reynoldsburg, Ohio, where we saw just really phenomenal results around this concept empathetic messaging, where we ask people, we have a sort of like a little hedgehog that's asking a confused cat next to a recycling bin about what, is the cat feeling confused about recycling, and the cat admits always. And we saw that seemed to really have struck a chord. And I think what we're sort of positing is that people are feeling quite busy, quite overwhelmed. They have a lot of questions about how to recycle. They know they should be doing it, but they're hearing all sorts of sort of conflicting information about, whether it's working, and, exactly how to follow the instructions. And so we're seeing that, when we offer this, potentially the sort of olive branch of like, it's okay to be confused, that's actually potentially exactly how to grab people's attention and make them feel supported and sort of pull them into a conversation. And then thirdly, we looked at the effect of in-home bins in Cincinnati, and we saw some really interesting results, particularly around supporting non-participants. And so coming out of that, we're again, I think that's also in the attachment section, but I think the punchline there is that in-home bins may be particularly impactful for households that are not participating already, who are kind of getting from 0 to 1, if you will. And that really connects for us to our ethnographic research coming full circle, because we think existing participants or very active participants have probably already designed systems in their homes, but it's our non-participants or our kind of very, very infrequent participants who need help thinking about not just how do you get it to the curb, but what are all the dynamics inside their households that can help improve flow and capture more materials. I ran through that quickly. Hopefully that was helpful, but all the attachments are there, and I'm really happy to answer more questions on that via email.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Louise. Yeah, I found that really interesting too. I personally have a trash can, 2 trash cans, in my kitchen, and it does help when you have somewhere to put those in your house before you take them out to, in the garage. So definitely. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that we saw the centralized collection in kitchens as a pretty common setup, but the most successful recyclers also have them in their bathrooms, their home offices, and kind of throughout the house.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I wouldn't even think about that. I just carry my stuff all over into the kitchen. Thank you all very much. We are almost time. Those were some great questions. I know we had a ton more. Like I said, we're going to send these to the presenters and have them follow up with you via email. So thank you so much for the engagement. And thank you, presenters. Thank you, Eric, Becky, and Louise, for such a great session. I know we wanted to put this one on because we hear all the time that people say that, is it really being recycled? Are things really being recycled? So we wanted to bring you here to show that, yes, absolutely, things are being recycled and you're investing in recycling. And, this is what's happening in Ohio. So thank you all so much for presenting, and thank you all for being here and joining us today. We did record this webinar, and we will, you'll get an email afterwards that'll have a link to the recording and a session survey. But before we let you go, we want to remind you that we have a full day of conference sessions tomorrow. So tomorrow is the last day of the 2023 Sustainability Conference. So please join us tomorrow. We have presentations on green healthcare, on alternative energy, on zero waste events, and sustainable agriculture. So hopefully you'll join us tomorrow. The PDF version of the PowerPoint in the handout there has these are hyperlinks, so you can click on them to register, or just go to the conference website to sign up for more sessions tomorrow. And then before we go, real quickly, I just wanted to bring your attention back again to Ohio EPA's Recycling and Litter Prevention Grant Program. So this is our annual grant program. It supports communities, nonprofits, businesses, schools, and all three of our presenters today have taken advantage of this program. This grant program, we love to support, all things recycling. And this program is actually going to be opened up in a little under 2 weeks, so about a week and a half from now on October 2nd. Our application window opens. It'll be open for 2 months and close on December 1st. So if you want to look into more questions about that, go to recycleohio.gov to learn more about the recycling grant program. And then finally, we do value your feedback. Once you leave, you'll receive a pop-up and it'll ask you to take a survey. We, again, value this feedback. We greatly appreciate it if you could let us know how we're doing. Let us know if there's anything we can do to further assist you. You can also, you'll also get one in a follow-up email about 24 to 48 hours. That'll have a link to the recording of this session, a certificate of attendance, and then another link to the survey if you don't get a chance to fill it out when you exit out today. And with that, we're going to end this session of Ohio EPA's Sustainability Conference. We hope you can join us tomorrow for more conference sessions. Thank you again for joining us, and have a great day.
Thank you so much.